Most people spend their entire lives searching for their purpose outside themselves, in careers, relationships, achievements, and die still looking. A 3,000-year-old framework says you've been looking in the wrong direction the entire time. What you're about to learn isn't motivation. It's not a vision board exercise or a personality quiz. It's a structured 4 question process from one of the oldest psychological frameworks ever written, and it maps almost perfectly onto what modern purpose researchers have spent decades trying to figure out. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear method for uncovering what your life is actually for, not what you think it should be, what it actually is. Here's a story. A man named Richard Feynman, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, once said he almost quit physics entirely in his 20s because he felt he'd lost his passion for it. His mentor told him to stop worrying about passion and just play with problems that interested him, even trivial ones. Feynman started calculating the wobble of a spinning plate thrown in a cafeteria for fun. That pointless play led directly to the work that won him the Nobel Prize. The modern advice to follow your passion assumes your passion is already fully formed, waiting to be found like a buried treasure. But that's not how it works. Passion follows competence. Meaning follows contribution. The feeling of purpose is a result, not a starting point. The ancient Vedic texts understood this. They describe purpose not as something external to chase, but as something internal to uncover. The Sanskrit concept, and I'll translate this plainly, is essentially the idea that every person is born with a specific nature, a specific combination of qualities, tendencies, and capacities, and when you act in alignment with that nature in a way that serves something beyond yourself, that's when purpose stops being a concept and starts being a feeling you live inside every day. Modern researcher William Damon at Stanford spent years studying purpose and landed on 3 components: personal meaning, the engagement of your genuine strengths, and contribution to something beyond yourself. That's almost word for word what this ancient framework describes. The difference is the ancient framework gives you a process for actually getting there. The first question in this framework is the one most people skip because it feels too simple. The question is, what do you do naturally without being told? Not what you're good at because you train for it. Not what you do for approval. What do you do when you're left completely alone with free time and no agenda? Some people organize things, some people talk to strangers, some people take broken objects apart to see how they work. Some people write in notebooks nobody will ever read. These aren't hobbies, they're signals. The ancient framework divides human nature into broad categories: thinkers, builders, communicators, caretakers, makers. And the point isn't to box yourself in. The point is to stop fighting your own wiring. A person built to think and analyze who forces themselves into a role that requires constant social performance will feel a low-grade wrongness their entire life, even if the paycheck is good. There's a useful psychological concept called autotelic experience, when an activity is its own reward, when you lose track of time doing it. Researchers who study flow states say these moments are the clearest signal of where your natural capacities are strongest. So the first question isn't, what do I want to do with my life? It's simpler and harder at the same time. What is the thing I keep returning to even when I try to stop? The second question is about your history, and this is where the framework gets interesting. Every experience you've had, including the painful ones, especially the painful ones, has been shaping a specific set of capacities in you. The ancient texts describe this as the accumulation of what you've been given to work with in this life. Modern psychology calls it post-traumatic growth, or simply what you've been forced to develop. A woman who grew up in a chaotic household often develops an extraordinary capacity for reading emotional environments and managing uncertainty. That's not a wound she has to overcome. That's a skill that took years to build. The question is whether she deploys it intentionally. A man who failed at his first 3 businesses didn't waste those years. He built a very specific understanding of what doesn't work, which is worth more in many contexts than knowing what does. The framework asks you to look at your life not as a random series of events but as a curriculum. What have you been repeatedly put in situations that required you to develop? What do people come to you for, almost without you advertising it? This connects directly to what researchers call earned strengths. Capacities that weren't innate but were forged under pressure. These are often the most powerful contributors to purpose because they carry both skill and empathy. You know the territory from the inside. The second question is, what has your life been training you for, whether you chose the training or not? Here's where purpose stops being a personal project and becomes something real. The ancient framework is unambiguous on this point. Purpose that serves only yourself is not purpose, it's preference. The distinction matters because preferences shift constantly. A life organized around what you enjoy will feel hollow the moment enjoyment fades. A life organized around genuine contribution has a different quality entirely. It has weight. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, wrote that the people who endured the worst conditions were not the ones who had the most hope for themselves. They were the ones who felt someone or something needed them. Purpose pulls from outside you, not just from inside. The third question asks you to look outward. Given your natural wiring and your earned strengths, who is struggling with something you understand deeply? This is not about finding a charity to volunteer for. It's about identifying the specific intersection between what you carry and what the world is actually short of. A person with a natural gift for making complexity simple and years of experience navigating grief might find their purpose in helping people understand medical diagnoses. A person with a builder's mind and experience with poverty might find it in designing affordable housing. The specifics matter. Researchers studying meaning and well being consistently find that contribution is not a nice addition to a purposeful life. It is the mechanism that makes purpose feel real. Without it, the other two questions produce a very self aware person who still feels empty. The third question, who is out there right now carrying something that your specific combination of nature and experience has prepared you to help with? The fourth question is the one that separates people who understand their purpose from people who live it. The ancient framework describes this as the commitment to action, regardless of outcome, not reckless action, not blind optimism, but the deliberate choice to build something in alignment with your nature and your contribution, even when the results are slow and uncertain. Most people who go through a process of self inquiry arrive at a clear sense of what they're meant to do and then wait. They wait for the right moment, the right resources, the right permission. The ancient texts are direct about this. Waiting is not preparation, it's avoidance dressed up as patience. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called the intention action gap, the well documented tendency for people to identify what they want to do and then not do it. The gap is not closed by more clarity. It's closed by the smallest possible concrete action taken now. The fourth question is not what is my purpose? You've been building toward that answer through the first 3 questions. The fourth question is, what is the smallest thing I can build starting this week that puts my nature and my contribution into motion? Not a 5 year plan, not a brand, a conversation, a project, a practice, something real and small enough to actually do. Purpose is not a destination you arrive at, it's a direction you keep choosing. The ancient framework understood that the feeling of purpose comes from the act of building in alignment with your nature, not from finally figuring everything out. You don't find your purpose, you construct it, one deliberate action at a time. If you made it to the end of this video, you now have a framework that most people never encounter. 4 questions that cut through the noise and give you something to actually work with. Here's what I want you to do right now. Go to the description and grab the free Daily Mind Reset Kit. It includes a written version of this 4 question framework with prompts you can work through on paper, because this kind of thinking needs to get out of your head and onto a page to become real. If you found this useful, subscribe. We put out new videos every week on this exact kind of material. Ancient frameworks translated into practical tools you can use today. And if you have any questions about what we covered, whether it's one of the 4 questions you're stuck on or something in your own situation you want to think through, drop it in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. Your question might be exactly what someone else needed to hear answered.